Hello everyone, welcome back to my channel. I'm Quinn Buckland, author of novels such as The Angel That Runs the World, Fallen Gods, and my latest novel, Dead Man Walking. Today, I don't mind the dogs. I'm by myself with them, so they kind of gotta be in the same room as me. Otherwise they get into things. But anyway, today I am ranking all of the Diskworld books. I went through pretty much the entirety of Diskworld this year. Pretty much reading them all in order. And yeah, I mean most of it was through Audible because, well, I drive for a living. But I did actually read a few of them too. But anyway, I'm ranking these, from 1 to 41, my favorite to least favorite. I do want to point out, right from the start, that all of these books are absolutely fantastic. There is not a one of them that I did not like, and there's not a one of them that I have no intention of reading again. They all are just fantastic. But without any further ado, let's get a start on this. Starting with Wintersmith. Wintersmith goes here. If for no other reason than this is pretty much the Tiffany Aching book that got me to like Tiffany Aching. I liked the Knack McFeagles almost right from the start because, well, they're hilarious for one, but also they're just a really fascinating style of creature. And in Tiffany Aching, they are definitely the comic relief, and, well, I definitely love a good comic relief. So, Wintersmith, with We Free Men and Hatful of Sky, of course I was all in for the Knack McFeagle, but this is the first one that got me to actually like Tiffany Aching as a character. And all of them after this are just so good. I mean, they're all really good to begin with, but yeah. Anyway, moving on. Thud. Thud goes up here. I found Thud did have a couple slower moments to it, but for the most part, the book is really good. I do love Vimes' philosophy of if I'll miss it for a good reason, I'll miss it for a bad reason. It is something that I myself have actually started taking into my own personal life and in terms of my own personal philosophy. Because, well, it's true. If a person will justify something for a good reason, then they will justify it for a bad reason. Also, I just really like the social commentary that goes on in this in terms of, the dwarves and the trolls and their fight over Coombe Valley and stuff like that. Moving on. Thief of Time. Right up here. Thief of Time was fantastic. I definitely loved pretty much everything that had to go with it. This was the final death book, and I think this is the death book that had the least amount of death as a character in it. It really did mostly follow Susan and the Son of Time. I can't remember his name for the life of me. But yeah, it followed those two characters for the most part, and every once in a while, Death would be there because he's got to go and do what he's got to do. Ooh. All in all, Thief of Time was just really good, and a great final book. Just a great send-off for Susan, because I really came to really enjoy her character, and yeah, just great send-off. Monstrous Regiment. Where did I put Monstrous Regiment? But I actually have my list just off screen there. So sometimes I'm just trying to figure out where I put everything. But Monstrous Regiment goes right here. And as much as I enjoyed the social commentary of Thud, the social commentary of Monstrous Regiment is just fantastic. The whole women in war and women in combat sort of thing, and how it's supposedly this whole men's thing, but, it's got women, it stars women, and women have always kind of been fighting in war, even if they do end up dressing up as men for it. It's this whole thing. Oh yeah, by the way, I'm probably going to be doing some spoilery stuff throughout this. So if you haven't read the Discworld books, I really recommend it. If you don't care about mild spoilers, then continue forward. I am going to try to not spoil things as much as possible. I'm not going to go into like storyline or anything like that, but I will say certain things. Reaper Man. Reaper Man goes right here. This is the Death book that actually focuses on Death as a character. It's the only Death book that focuses on Death as a character. I mean, they all kind of do, but this is the first one where Death is the main character. And honestly, I kind of wanted more like this. Don't get me wrong, I like Susan. And Mort is an absolutely fantastic character, but I just really wanted more of Death as a main character. To be following Death more than what we did. Yeah. Anyway. Guards. This is going to be a bit of a controversial take, because I know how much almost everybody loves Guards, but it goes down here. Don't get me wrong, the storyline is great, the characters are fantastically written, everything is just perfect in terms of what it is, except for some of the depictions of the characters. Like, I get what's being gone for here. This is a very dark, this is a very grounded style story, especially in comparison to all of the books that came before it. This is the most grounded of the stories. But this is the story where Vimes is at his most cynical, Colin is at his most racist, Nobby is at his most knobby, and Carrot is super naive all the way through it. And it's just one of those things where I couldn't really find myself getting behind any of these characters. Like, they do get better as the story progresses, but they don't really have a full arc. Their full arcs tend to go through the entirety of the Watch series. And as a starting point, Guards is absolutely fantastic. And as a book, Guards is absolutely fantastic. But in comparison to pretty much the majority of the Discworld books, it's not its strongest. Now let's talk about the strongest Discworld book. My personal favorite, The Fifth Elephant. This book has everything that I could possibly want, not just in a Discworld book, but in a novel to begin with. It has hilarity. It has social commentary, relevant social commentary. It has all the characters doing something absolutely necessary, not just toward their character, but toward the plot in general. Like, just everything. It has Vimes running naked through the snow and fighting werewolves barehanded. I'm sorry. You're not going to top that. The Fifth Elephant was the one that just blew me away. It blows almost all the other books out of the sky in comparison, because it just has so much more of what I personally like in not just a Discworld book, but in a story in general, that The Fifth Elephant is my personal favorite. Weird Sisters. Weird Sisters is here. I'm not entirely sure what I think about Weird Sisters. Like, I enjoyed it. It's definitely a really good book. Not entirely on board with Granny Weatherwax in this one, or at least I wasn't when I was reading it. I don't know, I think Granny Weatherwax was one that had to really grow on me to begin with, and because her character is very abrasive, especially in the first few books, I just really couldn't get behind it. A lot of the other characters definitely make up for it. Like, McGrath is one that I definitely came to really enjoy. Nanny Ogg is one of my personal favorite characters in all of fiction. Seriously, I love Nanny Ogg. She's so great. Anytime that she showed up in a book, I was immediately happy. I also really like the Macbeth aspect of this. So, all in all, Weird Sisters is really good, but it's just not as strong as a lot of the others. A Hat Full of Sky. I'm sorry to say, but this one's the very bottom of the barrel for me. Tiffany's still very much a child in this, and I found that the villain spirit thing was just not near as interesting as it probably could have been. It's one of those things where I found that it was defeated just a little too easily, and its effect on Tiffany was kind of really... It reminded me of Mean Girls, like the movie Mean Girls. And as much as I enjoy the movie for what it is, it's not what I'm looking for in a Discworld book. Like, Hatful of Sky, as I've stated before, all the Discworld books are fantastic. They're all worth reading. They're all worth reading again. But I do think this is probably the weakest Discworld book. And we're going to go from one Tiffany Aching to another with I Shall Wear Midnight. And it goes right here. I really enjoyed this one. Tiffany is probably at her most dynamic at this point. She's at her most interesting. And frankly, her and Ankh-Morpork with the Nakmek-Feegle honestly just kind of wins the book for me. The villain in and of itself is really fascinating. Her getting over her love interest with Roland is great. Pretty much this entire book just sets everything up for the final Tiffany Aching book. And it does a really good job of that, but it's also just a really good story in and of itself. I also just really, really love the reappearance of Escarina, because she was a really good character. I really did like her character in Equal Rights, which we'll get to eventually. But yeah, I Shall Wear Midnight, fantastic book. I really enjoyed this one. The Amazing Maurice goes right there. It was good. I really liked it. It had some really cool, exciting moments. I did find it to be just a little more on the silly side than what a lot of the Discworld books are. Like, the Discworld books are comedy, but they also have a lot more to them in terms of the characters. And while this book does have some really good and very well written characters, I did find the premise in and of itself to be just really silly. And I don't know. I do think that just kind of took away from what I would have liked the story, or at least where I would have liked the story to go. But that's just me. Carpe Jugulum is above Thief of Time, that's for sure. Carpe Jugulum, the final of the Witches books. This one was so good. This one kept me guessing as to where it was going to go. I was really tickled with the whole Granny Weatherwax aspect, and I was really interested in to see what Granny Weatherwax was doing and why she was doing what she was doing throughout this. I like that they're vampires, and I like that they're vampires trying to get around their own personal narratives, which is amazing. Like, it's something that I've definitely seen done before, but I've never seen it done quite like this, and quite so effectively. My god, that dog scratches hard. Alright. The Color of Magic goes right after Guards. This one was good. This is the one, this is the book I started with, and I definitely, it definitely got my attention pretty quickly. I was really interested to see where it was going, and I liked the character of Rincewind. I liked the character of Two Flower. Would have liked there to have been a bit more actual storyline to it, a bit more plot. But, I mean, for the most part, I really don't have a lot of notes on this book. It's just one that's really, it's just really good. Eric is right here. This one was good. It's short, it's sweet, it's to the point. It's not as fantastic as a lot of other Discworld books, but it's not terrible by any means. It's just Eric. It's a Rincewind book. It's one of those books where you really start to get the Rincewind narrative. All the Rincewind books kind of follow a similar narrative and a similar styling. This is the one where it really becomes very obvious in terms of what it's going for. That's not a bad thing. I love the Rincewind narrative when it comes to the Discworld books. But I think if this one were a little longer, I probably would have had it a little higher up. But because it's so short, it really doesn't have a lot of time to breathe. And I do think that does work a little bit into its... it just doesn't work quite as well because of it. Feet of Clay. This one is absolutely fantastic. One of the best books I've ever read. It's so good. Its commentary is fantastic. The characters are almost at their absolute best in this book. Everything is just... I think if I were to say a perfect Discworld book, this is probably the perfect Discworld book. Because it's got everything that you could possibly want in it. I have two other books above this one in terms of my own personal likings. But in terms of Discworld, this is probably the perfect Discworld book. I can't express just how fantastic this is. And I can't talk about it, otherwise I'm going to be spoiling things. Just read this. I mean, read the ones before this one, but read this one. Going Postal. Where did I put Going Postal? Right there. Going Postal. So, Going Postal was originally going to be much lower on the list because I really, really was not into Moist von Lipwig. I thought him as a character was just awful. I really just wasn't into him. But about halfway through the book, I started to root for him, and I started to get into what he was doing and where he was. And then all of a sudden, I was really into this story. I was really into the character, and I love it when a story starts out with a character that I absolutely hate and makes me like them. Hell, not even just like them, actually really root for the character. I cannot express just how much I love it when that happens. It makes me so happy. So Going Postal, it is probably the weakest of the Moist von Lipwig books, but when it's right here, yeah, you know you're doing something right. The Hogfather. The Hogfather is above Reaperman. This is the one where I really started to like Susan, and it also has Death in it a lot as a character. This is probably the best of the Death books. I mean, yeah, I know Thief of Time is up here, but this is the best of the Death books in general. And, well, it's just really well done. I really love what it is and where the story went. And honestly, just its entire premise in general is just fantastic. Death taking over the role of the Hogfather, which is the Discworld's version of Santa Claus. Like who comes up with something like that? And why Death took over the role of the Hogfather. Like, it's just really, really well done and so interesting. Speaking of interesting times. Interesting times is, yes, right here. This is the one that comes pretty much right after Eric, and as far as a Rincewind book goes, it's fine, it's good. As far as Discworld books go, there are plenty that are stronger than it, but I did like seeing Rincewind again. I did like seeing it. I like Rincewind as a character. Sometimes I'm not always on board with him being kind of the butt of the joke. but I do really appreciate him as a character, and I do like the idea of the cowardly wizard. Also, just seeing the Agatean Empire for the first time was really, really fascinating. Jingo! Jingo goes here. Jingo is really, really good. It's got a real... Like, it has a lot to say on the concept of war and xenophobia and racism and stuff like that. It loses some marks with me because you kind of got to experience the racism and xenophobia from some of the characters, especially from some of the characters that I had a thought by this point would be past that sort of thing. But it turns out they're not, and that really does tend to bother me. I mean, I know racism exists, I know xenophobia exists, and people go through it and experience it every day in their personal lives and stuff like that. But, I don't know. Something about it just... I think this one just comes down to my own personal enjoyment. It's a fantastic book. It has a lot of really, really good stuff to say. But, I don't know. I just didn't enjoy it as much. Still fantastic. Would still recommend it to basically everybody. The Last Hero. This one goes right here. This is a picture book. And it's basically Cohen the Barbarian's send-off. Really well written. Really funny. Not as long as I would have liked it to have been. Not as in-depth in terms of a story as I would have liked to have been. It was kind of just really bang, 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 bang. This happens, then this happens, then this happens, then this happens. And I think this one was written more for the sake of the joke than anything else. So, it doesn't score very high with me, but it also doesn't score particularly low. The Light Fantastic. This one goes right here. This is the one that actually got me interested in Diskworld. Well, The Color of Magic got me... like, it fascinated me, and it kind of made me want to continue on. This one made me want to actually read the series. This one made me actually want to continue to experience this world over and over and over again. The Light Fantastic is... I know a lot of people will say don't start with the first 3 books, because they are arguably the weakest of the Diskworld. And in a lot of ways, they're not wrong. But I do think that they are a good starting point. Because while The Color of Magic is an introduction to Diskworld as a world, The Light Fantastic is an introduction to Diskworld. No, actually, this is introduction to Diskworld as an idea. This is introduction to Diskworld as a world. This is the one where Diskworld feels like an actual world. And Rincewind and Two Flower really go on exploring in this one, and there's an actual storyline, there's a plot, there's so much more going on. This is, like, to understand this one, you have to read this one, but this one, this is the one that got me interested. And I think that if I hadn't started from the very beginning, I probably would not have enjoyed these two as much as I had. Because, well, I mean, you look at how low they are. After reading something like, say, Feet of Clay, it's hard to go down to Color of Magic and go, oh. Because, I mean, my original idea was... Because I'd always heard that the first 3 books are the weakest and they're not that great. So I'm like, well, if I don't like it, I know it gets better. And if I do like it, it gets better. So... I would recommend people start at the beginning, just like I did, but I understand people not wanting to. Anyway, that's my tangent on this. Okay, Lords and Ladies. This one goes just above Eric. Lords and Ladies is the one that actually got me to first actually like Granny Weatherwax. I finally really understood who Granny was, and the lengths that she will go not only to just win, but to protect everybody else at the same time. Granny is very calculating. She's able to figure things out really easy. And while she comes off as cold personally, and a lot of the time, she definitely has people's best interests at heart. And frankly, deep down, she does seem to be kind of a softie, but also really not at the same time. Like, she cares. She really cares, but she cares in her own way. Masquerade. Where did I put Masquerade? Okay, yeah, it's after. Masquerade is just before Light Fantastic, and right there. I honestly think this is probably the weakest of the Witches books. Mostly because I just really wasn't on board with Agnes Nitt. She's fine as a character, I think. She's got some real self-esteem issues. I mean, and before people get in the comments and talk about Magrat, yes, I know Magrat has self-esteem issues, but at the same time, her self-esteem issues mostly revolve around Granny. You know, you get Magrat by herself, yeah, she's still a little bit of a wet napkin, but at the same time, she still is capable of sticking up for herself against most everybody else. Whereas Agnes is really not capable of sticking up for herself. She kind of had to create this Perdita alter ego to kind of deal with other people and their biting commentaries and stuff like that. And it just really didn't sit as well with me as it probably could have. And I think it's because Agnes doesn't really get much better. She just kind of learns to embrace Perdita more. I don't know. It just felt really weak to me. Men-at-Arms. Men-at-Arms goes right here. This is probably the first Night Watch book that I actually really liked. Mostly because the characters just kind of got better. Nobby was not quite as diabolical as he was in the last one. Colin is, well, he's still Fred Colin. But he's a little bit more accepting than he was. Actually, I think he's at his most accepting in this one. Vimes is at his most accepting in this one. Carrot is less naive, but he's still kind of got that... But he still kind of has that naive charm to him, but he's not as naive as he was. It almost seems like it's a bit of an act at this point. And also just the introduction of Angua and bringing Detritus on as a character in this one. It's just great because Detritus is probably at his best while he's in the Watch. And yeah, it's just so good. Mort was number 1 on my list until I read Fifth Elephant. I remember going through the list as I'm reading them and seeing Mort at number 1 and going, is anything gonna be able to beat this? Did this peak at the 4th book for me? No, it peaked about halfway through the series for me. Peaked. Don't get me wrong, there's a lot of really fantastic books after this one too. But Mort was the first one that really, really got me. It's the first one that really got me interested in what was going on. And in the 4th book, that's kind of where you want it to be. Moving Pictures. Yes, Moving Pictures is right here. Honestly, this one just really surprised me with how good it was. I mean, don't get me wrong, it doesn't really have much in the way of commentary or anything like that, but I really love the movie references. I love the characters. It's the first time we see CMOT Dibbler, just kind of being CMOT Dibbler. Like, we definitely get a reference to him in Guards, and I think he does show up in 1 or 2 other books before this one, but this is the first one where Dibbler really becomes a character. The movie actors are great. Everything's just really fantastic. This one was actually much higher to start with. But, I mean, with how good a lot of the Discworld books get, it's not surprising it kind of got pushed down a little bit. But for what it is, I absolutely love it. Night Watch. Night Watch goes there, yes. This is Sam Vimes at his absolute best. He's hunting down a serial killer. He's traveling through time. He's inspiring people of the Night's Watch. He's inspiring his own younger self. He's being this mentor that everyone comes to love and appreciate in only just a few days. All under the landscape of this huge revolution that's building up in Ankh-Morpork. Like, oh, it's so good. Vimes is at his absolute best in this, and it's not surprising I have this book as high as it is. Equal rights. When they say that the first 3 books are the weakest, I definitely agree with this one. Granny Weatherwax is super undesirable as a character in this one. Escarina is fine. I did like her as a character, but she's still kind of just a snotty child at the same time. She's not at her best. I mean, granted, we only see her in this one and this one, but I do find her much better in this one, to be perfectly honest. But as a character, she is really good in this one. I do like the idea of, equal rights in terms of gender when it comes to witches and wizards. Because Granny Weatherwax and the Unseen University seem to have that same ideal that men are wizards, women are witches, and the two cannot be the same. Whereas in equal rights, it questions that. Do I think that it goes completely all the way with that? No, I do think that this idea is explored much better in, say, some Tiffany Aching books and Monstrous Regiment. But for what it is still a really good book. Pyramids. Not the best, not the worst. To be perfectly honest, I do find this to be a very middle-of-the-road sort of Discworld book for me. There are a lot of them that are way better. So when I say middle-of-the-road, I do mean, like, I don't mean, like, it's right in the middle of it. Like, it's just kind of it's good, it's funny, it tells a really good story, but it's just kind of whatever in terms of everything that it is. I think if Tepik as a character would have shown up at least in one other book, I probably would have been able to have a little bit more appreciation for the character. But since he's only in the one book, it's hard for me to really get to like Tepik as a character, especially since he starts off as an assassin. He's not a very good assassin, and, he almost failed his exam, but, it's Tepik. Raising Steam. Raising Steam goes right here. In terms of watch books, this is probably a great... Raising Steam is not a watch book. Raising Steam is a Moist von Lipwig book. And it is very good. It is very, very good. Is it the best that it probably could have been? That's arguable. I mean, for what it is absolutely fantastic, and it's one that I would definitely recommend to other people. But it is probably not the strongest of the... It's definitely not the strongest Discworld book, but it is very strong in terms of what it is. It's trains. It's trains into the Discworld. I do, however, find it very upsetting. I do find it upsetting that Terry Pratchett would never be able to actually expand on the train tracks. Because he got to expand with his idea of the clacks. But the railroad kind of just got to stay with what it was. You have Raising Steam, and then... The Shepherd's Crown. Both of which have the railroad as very important aspects of their story. But far from that, there's not really much of an exploration, and because there really couldn't be. And I mean, Raising Steam is a fantastic book, but I think it's a little higher with what it is. I think it's a little higher on this list because it is upsetting that this will never be able to be explored further. And it kind of just made me a little bit more sentimental toward this book. The Shepherd's Crown, the final Diskworld book. I loved it. It was so good. Oh man. In terms of the send-off of the Diskworld book, as a finale, as everything that this book just is everything that it needed to be. It is as good a send-off as the Diskworld can possibly have. There are some things that just can't really end with a satisfying conclusion. Stuff like, say, Doctor Who. It's almost impossible to end that one with a satisfactory conclusion. The Diskworld is also one that's really hard to end satisfactorily. And I think The Shepherd's Crown is as good of a final book as we could possibly ask for. It is really good. It's a great send-off for Tiffany Aching. It's a great send-off for Ankh-Morpork in general. It's a great send-off for Witches. It's a great send-off for the Nac-McFeegle. It's a great send-off for Granny Weatherwax, and Nanny Og, and Magrat, and Agnes, and Anagramma, and all these other characters. Hell, even Miss Earwig. It's just a great send-off, just all round. I think Pratchett might have known that this was going to be his last book, so he made it as much of a send-off as possible, as much of a satisfying send-off as possible, and it definitely did. I can't say for sure whether or not he actually knew, but it's just kind of the impression I got while reading it. He wanted to end things satisfactorily, and mission accomplished. That was my rant for this. Small Gods. This is going to be another really controversial take, but this one goes under Color of Magic. To be perfectly honest, the commentary on religion is fantastic. The setting is great. The ideas are fantastic. As a character was absolutely unbearable to get through, and Brother being kind of really spineless toward his god for the first 2/3 of the book is really hard to get through sometimes, because is so unbearably cynical and mean that I get the humor, I get what it's going for, but it's just, I don't know, maybe this one just wasn't for me in terms of that respect. I honestly don't know what could have made me like this one more. Yeah, I have no idea. I know it's super controversial. I know a lot of people really, really love this book, and some have even cited it as the best Diskworld book. I still think Feet of Clay is the best Diskworld book. The Fifth Elephant is just my favorite. Is my personal favorite Diskworld book. Feet of Clay is the best Diskworld book. Not much of a distinction, but there is a difference. Snuff. Snuff was fantastic. I don't know, something about Snuff. I don't even know what it is about Snuff that just really got my interest. I think it's just because Vimes really shows a major turnaround in terms of how he views other races. Well, Nightwatch is definitely Sam Vimes at his best as a character and as an inspiration. Snuff is Vimes really showing how far he has come in terms of, how he was in Guards. He is the Sam Vimes that I really came to admire. And it made Snuff just all that much better. instead of being cynical, he's kind of sarcastic to the people that he doesn't like, but he's very intense and caring to the people that he does. And it's something that just really, really tickled me. Soul music. Come on, computer. It's being stupid. Soul music goes right here. This is the introduction for Susan. And, well, I would come to really enjoy and appreciate Susan later on. Like in Hogfather and Thief of Time. I wasn't really sold on her as a character in Soul Music. And while I do get why Death stepped away from his job for a little while, I do find the motivation to be kind of weak. At the same time, I do find Susan's motivations to be a little strange. It just felt like a bit more of a rehash of Mort. Because Susan is making some of the same decisions and some of the same mistakes that Mort did, but is somehow capable of getting away with it just a little bit more than what Mort was. And, I mean, granted, at the same time, Susan had a little bit of help from a bit more of a supernatural element than Mort just refusing to do it. But I did really, really love all the music references in this book. Oh my god, I laughed so hard. Alright, Sorcery. Sorcery goes right here. I don't know what it is about Sorcery that I just didn't care as much about. Rincewind just wasn't quite as Rincewind as I would have liked, I think. The warrior chick was okay. She was a serviceable character. Nigel was... He was an acceptable comic relief character. The prince guy was pretty hard to get to like, as well, he's just really obnoxious. And unfortunately, the luggage just isn't in it near as much as I would have liked. Sorcery is good. It's a really good book, but it's just not what I came to expect and enjoy when it comes to Diskworld books. Like, you look at the ones underneath it so far, and then you look at the ones up here, and you can definitely see where I'm coming from with a lot of these. And Sorcery is just not as strong as it probably could have been. Still absolutely fantastic, but it's not as strong as some of these others. Making money. Where did I put making money? Oh, hell, I put making money much higher than I thought. Making money goes right here. This one is Moist von Lipwig at his best. He is an absolutely fantastic character in this book. Oh my god, like, he's very witty, he's trying very hard to be just an average normal person. He's in over his head in a situation that he himself did not create and had absolutely nothing to do with. I just bumped my microphone. Hooray for me. And you know what? He makes the best of it. He makes it work. And then that ending is... that ending is probably the best ending in all of the Diskworld books. Making money is just great. It's so good. The Last Continent. Yeah, okay, I believe that. This is my favorite Rincewind book. It is probably it is actually the best of the Rincewind books. Unfortunately, it is. Well, it's not the last Rincewind book. You got the last hero here, but this is the last of what I consider to be the Rincewind books. And it's essentially Rincewind in the Discworld's version of Australia. And it's just fun seeing Rincewind experience all these things that he's never been able to even imagine before. Stuff like kangaroos and drop bears and a place where it doesn't rain, but You know, he still finds a way, like he still finds a way to bring water to everything. Rincewind is definitely more of a hero than a coward in this one, but he's still Rincewind at the same time. This is Rincewind at his absolute best. The Truth. That one goes right here. So, when it comes to Diskworld books, I do find a lot of them tend to lean toward one thing or another. Sometimes they'll lean more toward the comedy. Sometimes they'll lean more toward character development. Sometimes they will lead more toward lasting lore. Sometimes they'll lead more toward the message. This just has that perfect balance of everything. Not to mention just having what it needs to do to get its point across. It brings out the idea of the truth. Because, you know, you have the Ankh-Morpork Times, where its slogan is, "The truth will set you free." Free being the word that is consistently misspelled or misused or anything like that. Sometimes the truth will make you fret. Sometimes the truth will make you whatever. And yeah, it is just one of those things where it's like, holy shit, this is great. This is fantastic. It actually reminds me of that Simpsons line with Lionel Hutz. There's the truth and the truth. And that's kind of what this explores. Like, you have the Ankh-Morpork Times, which is trying to show people what the truth is. And then you have all these other newspapers that are just telling bold-faced lies or making stuff up. Like, it's showing how the truth can be folded and how the truth can be used to influence people. Also, the villains in this are just really good. Like, they feel like real villains. They feel like real people at the same time. They're super maniacal, they're super evil, and I just love every moment of them. This one definitely deserves to be number 4 in terms of this. The We Free Men. Goes right here. This is a good book. This one's really good. Tiffany as a child is hard to get through, especially with some of the stuff that goes on in the book. But for the most part, it's good. It's not Tiffany at her best. I do think that this is... But it's not Tiffany at her weakest either. You know, you got Half-Less Guy over here, but... I mean... You go from here to here... When that's the sort of jump a book makes, you know you're doing something right. Especially a character that starts here ends up here. This is worth it. This becomes worth it. It's a great starting place for this character. It's a great starting place for the Nac McFeegle. Like, I know they're introduced in Carpe Jogulum, but they're not really explored or overly utilized in Carpe Jogulum. This is the first time they're really used, and I love it. Unseen Academicals. Unfortunately, that does go down here. And for no other real reason than I'm just not a sports person. So the sports references and the sports stuff just didn't really connect with me. And that's kind of what this book is. It's a sports book. Like, yes, there is a whole other plot line with the orc and stuff like that, but for the most part, it's a sports book, and yeah, it just didn't connect with me as much as most of the others. And the final book, Witches Abroad. Not the strongest of the witches. Actually, from the looks of things, it is the weakest of the witches books. I don't really count Equal Rights as a witches book. I count that one as just being kind of an independent, despite having Granny Weatherwax in it. This is... I don't know. Magrat as a fairy godmother just seemed really weird to me. Especially her not being able to do anything with it, or having the imagination to actually make anything work, or to even experiment with the wand. Having Granny Weatherwax there, Granny was probably at her most unbearable at this. Even Nanny Ogg, I just don't think was utilized to her fullest potential. Like, don't get me wrong, Nanny Ogg is Nanny Ogg, and she's going to do as Nanny Ogg does. And the writing is fantastic throughout this. But I think in terms of witches books, this one's just not as strong. Like, I definitely appreciated the fairy tale references and the fairy tales that the witches basically subvert. But that's really about as far as it goes. Anyway, that's all the Diskworld books ranked. I loved reading them. I loved being able to experience this world. And I can't wait to go through these books over and over and over and over again, because they're just so good. Like, seriously, I can't get over how much I enjoyed them. And I think after a second reading, now that I've gone through them all, I would probably put these in different orders upon a second reading. I don't think I'll do another one of these, but I don't know. It's hard to say, because there are some books that I definitely have a bit more of an attachment to, like The Fifth Elephant, or Feet of Clay, or The Truth. Like, the top 10 is going to be really hard to switch around or move around, because they're all just so good. All the books are just really good. And it's going to be one of those things where it's really hard to move anything around. But I'm pretty sure after a second reading I would. But anyway, that's all I got for you guys. What are your favorite Diskworld books? Have you read the Diskworld books? Let me know in the comments below. Hell, let me know if you disagree with any of my placings. I mean, yeah, these are all my opinions, but I'm definitely open to hearing what other people have to say. You know, maybe you'll be able to convince me as to why Guards deserves to be much higher up, or why Small Gods deserves to be higher up. I know a lot of people really love these books and say that they are some of the best books ever. And I'm not inclined to disagree. They're just not the ones that I enjoyed as much. But anyway, that's all I got for you guys. So be sure to like, share, comment, subscribe. I am going to be trying very, very, very hard to be a bit more consistent with my video releases. I'm going to be trying to have a video for you guys at least once a week. I might miss a week here and there, but I am going to try very hard to have a video for you guys once a week, every week, and just go from there. It would be on the same days. It'll be on the video releases will be on Saturdays, because, well, it's just a good day for me to upload. But yeah, that's about all I got for you guys. So, you know, I've only said that like 3 or 4 times now. Have a good day.